Hello, it's Christmas Eve, and I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas from Somerset News Network. Now, what I'm going to do tonight is, I thought what I would do is do a review of my year, what's happened to me in the last 12 months. You won't believe what's happened. It's just unbelievable. If somebody told me this time last year that I'd almost end up in prison and that I'd almost be dead, I would not believe you. I'm going to tell you my story, but we've got a problem. It's a bit dark in here, and I've got an early Christmas present. My wife, God bless her, has bought me a webcam light. So I'm just going to plug it in and I'll be back. Now that's better, isn't it? You can see my ugly face. Got my Christmas jumper on. Got my Christmas tree behind me. And we're ready to go. Right, my year. This time last year, I had a phone call from the police. Somebody had complained about a Facebook post. But the same thing that happened to Alison Pearson of the Telegraph happened to me. Exactly the same. It's like textbook. Ian, we'd like to talk to you about your Facebook. Which one was it? I'm sorry, we can't tell you that. Well, I'm not coming in unless you tell me what it is so that I can defend myself. And who else has complained? You know. Oh no, sir, we can't tell you that. You'll have to come in for an interview. We want to know what your thinking is. I thought, what? It's like being in 1984. It's just, you know, George Orwell 1984 didn't have anything on this, I tell you. So anyway, we exchanged some emails and I explained that my comment was factual and true. That didn't make any difference. It's offensive. So from being offensive in the 1st December, we now go into January. And it's now malicious communications. Now I'm looking at 2 years inside. The same as Tommy Robinson. For a single one-line little comment on a Facebook post. Now, I'd like to tell you what it was. But if I say what it was, then I'm making the same comment I made before, and it wasn't anything wrong. I just don't want the hassle. So I'm being censored so I don't get police hassle. Anyway, on the Facebook post, there was a comment put underneath mine saying, see what he's like, he's homophobic and transphobic, and I'm going to the police. So, was this it's a lady's name there? Is this the lady that complained to the police? Because she said she was going to the police. So I'm sat there in the police station in January, and I said, who complained? I'm sorry, sir, can't tell you that. I said, well, who complained? I've got to know who my accuser is. No, sir. They've been offended, and it's malicious communications, and we need to know what your side of the story is. I said what I said was factual and true, and that it was done under the Bill of Rights, the right of free speech. As long as I don't libel anybody or defame anybody, I should be allowed to have a point of view. I'll be the judge of that, sir. This went on. Anyway, I disappeared out. Then they want another interview. This was now February now. I got hold of a lawyer. He said, you done nothing wrong. There is no need for me to get involved. You can handle this yourself. And we had a little chat. He gave me some advice. And he said, I'm not going to charge you for this stupid thing. You've done nothing wrong. I said, all right, mate, all right. I know I've done nothing wrong. So anyway, I turned up for the interview in February. Lo and behold, they've given me a lawyer. A legal aid lawyer. Now, we get to the police station and we're in the little foyer. And the lawyer comes in, speaks to me and says, don't say anything, I'm going to go and have a chat. So the lawyer goes in with the policeman into the interview room. They're in there for about a quarter of an hour. I thought, this is strange. Anyway, he comes out, we have a little chat, and he says, look, all you need to say is you didn't mean to offend. I said, well, I didn't. It was a factual statement. I didn't mean to offend anybody. So I think what they wanted me to do originally was to go in, see the comment that I'd made and go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Then you admit your guilt. If you admit your guilt, they can then give you a caution, which affects your whole life after that, because now you've got a conviction. But the Bill of Rights says that grants and promises of fines before conviction is illegal and void. I also pointed this out to the copper. But it's like it went straight over his head. He didn't have a clue. I said, well, I've got the right of free speech. Oh, you haven't got a right to offend anybody. I said, well, it's not offensive. I said, if somebody's offensive, I can't help that. It was factual and it was true. And that's it. I said, you ought to be out catching real criminals, not harassing me. I'm just an ordinary guy. And I said to the copper, I said, was it this lady? And I named her. His face dropped, as if to say, he's fucking found out. Excuse my French. And I thought, well, that's proved by, I can't say, sir, he said. And I said, well, if you can't say who it is, why don't you get hold of them? Their phone number is on there. Now, what I'd found out in the meantime is I'd hired a private investigator to do an internet search on this lady. The lady's name is a sock puppet of another guy that doesn't like me. So the other guys complained about me. And the copper could be his mate, or one of his mates, because he's using the police to harass me. And I've done a whole video on this about my story. And this went on until it's now February. Then I had a cold. I had a bad cold. I was coughing all over the place. Couldn't sleep. I, fell asleep in the chair. I wasn't sleeping at night. I just had a bad cold. Well, I thought I just had a bad cold. Anyway, Sunday morning, I was really bad. I was rough. And I thought, I'll be all right. It's just a bad cold. And I passed out at home. Flat out. My wife called the ambulance. The ambulance called the fire brigade to lift me up to get me in the ambulance. Oh, what a to-do. I don't know anything about it. She told me all about it. Anyway, I went into hospital. That was on the Sunday. I didn't wake up until the Tuesday morning. And I'm waking up in hospital thinking, where the hell am I? There's a nurse beside me. And he said, hello, Ian. Are you all right? I'm like, yeah. Would you like a drink? So I was given a drink and I was given some food. You've been in quite a rough way, Ian. Anyway, the doctors came later on that day, and they said, "Hello, Ian. You've had a little bit of a rough time, haven't you?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I passed out." You were almost dead, mate. Half an hour and you would have been gone. You're just glad that your wife phoned the ambulance. What? Well, I don't know. I just had a bad cold. Turns out I got pneumonia. My lungs had filled with water and it wasn't allowing the CO2 to leave. And I had CO2 poisoning in my bloodstream. That's why I was seizing up all the time. And my speech was affected. And I couldn't remember things. It's something that creeps up on you you don't realise. My hands would seize and I'd have to pull the fingers up and down. And this is all due to the CO2 poisoning. I couldn't think. I had to add some figures up and sent somebody a bill, and the bill was wrong, and he phoned me up and said, "Oi, Ian, you got the numbers wrong." So I said, "Oh, can you put it right?" And he did, and gave me the money. You know, absolutely weird. And then I got a call on my mobile in the hospital from the copper. He said, "I understand you're in hospital." I said, "Yeah." He said, "How long are you in?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I've had pneumonia and I'm recovering." He said, "When you come out, we've got to have a chat." Now I've got that hanging over me again. Anyway, March, he came to see me and he said, "Sign this piece of paper." And it wasn't a caution. It was just a note saying what happened. And that was it. And I just said to him, "Now you can go and catch some real criminals." And I also said to him, "Do you realise that the lady that complained was a sock puppet of somebody else? And have you investigated it?" "Oh, that's not my concern, sir." And he dismissed it. That leads me to believe that he knew who the guy was. He knew either he's a mate of the coppers that's mates with the guy, or he is a mate of the guy. I just can't understand how the police can be so corrupt. Anyway, that's all over and done with, and I'm recovering. I'm getting back to work. I work part-time. I'm not full-time anymore. And I fiddle around in the workshop and I make things and I do things. Then we've got a general election. Woohoo! We rejected the Tories because the Tories had gone woke, and we saw it. Starmer and his friends never said anything about what policies they had, and I thought that was odd. But I think it was a very clever move, because if you don't tell anybody what you're going to do, then you can't be blamed for it afterwards. I know they have the manifesto, but who's read that? So I was backing reform. And we had a local candidate here. And the Labour... I'm in North Somerset. It's considered a Conservative safe seat. The Conservatives has a 21,000 majority. And he lost. It's just unbelievable. And the Labour guy got in. Now I worked the figures out, and there's 9,000 votes missing. If the Tories had voted Tory, the Conservative would have got back in. The Reform Party had 5,000 votes. The Labour vote had a majority of round about 2,000, that's all. But we unseated a sitting MP. And I got on with him all right. He done me a lot of good. So now we got a new Labour MP. But now I got a slight little problem with getting the address changed on my shotgun certificate. Avon and Somerset Firearms, they won't do it because of the police investigation into the malicious communications. The malicious communication case had finished, over and done with, no problems. So now they should reissue my license with my new address on it. And they sat on their hands. I didn't get it at all. Oh, we've got to see if you're a fit and proper person. I've been handling firearms since I was 13 years old. I was in the cadets, then I was in the ATC, then I started work at 15. I was firing all sorts of stuff. In the cadets, I was firing the old Enfields Mark IV and Bren guns. When I started work, I was firing shotguns, rifles and muzzleloaders. And I've been doing that ever since, for 50 years. And they tell me they got to check if I'm a proper person. What they're doing is using the Facebook complaint to harass me again. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this is all odd. This is craziness. It's over and done with. I wanted to contact my new Labour MP. So I emailed him in July, in the beginning of July. I wrote to him at the end of July. Not a word. Not a dicky bird. Well, I knew he couldn't do anything until he'd actually got in and sworn his oath and things. But I must have been one of the first complaints that he had to try and solve. Come September, I'd had enough. I had to do something about this. I couldn't let this go on. So I did a video. Where is my MP? Now, I'm only getting 20, 30 views on here. I don't mind. You know what I think. I had 14,000 views in 2 days. I couldn't believe it. I thought, it's gone viral for my way of thinking. That was on the Friday. On the Sunday, I got an email from the MP. I've written to Avon and Somerset and they're looking into it. On the Monday afternoon, he phoned me and said, I think I've sorted out, you should be getting your licence back with a new address on. Oh, I said, thank you very much. I said, I'm sorry I had to do the video, but I said nothing was happening and I had to make something happen. And he was as good as gold. I got to admit that. He'd done what I'd asked. And it was an MP's job to try and get things sorted. Righting wrongs, if you like. So I got my licence back and everything's hunky-dory. Now, reform are growing and growing in popularity. Labour has been the worst Labour government in known history. I've been through Harold Wilson, I've been through Callaghan, been through Michael Foot, and I'm not a Labour supporter, I've got to admit that. Dad was on the docks. I was a union representative when I was in the civil service. If anybody should be a Labour supporter, it's me. But I saw through them very, very early. And they're wolves in sheep's clothing. They say all the right things, but they're nasty, horrible people. I've got on with old Labour. I like old Labour. You knew where you stood with old Labour. The problem we have is this new Labour woke ideas. Men can put a dress on, say they're female, and go into female toilets. That's just wrong. Labour support it. Trans men can enter into ladies' races. It's just wrong. I know it's wrong. And most of the people, 90% of the population, know it's wrong. But the woke trans movement has got such a hold on politics, the media. If you say anything against them, you're homophobic, transphobic, and whatever phobic they can throw at you. Oh, we have got to get back to a balanced debate and fair debate without thinking, oh, I can't say that, that'll offend somebody. Well, as long as I'm telling the truth and as long as I'm honest and I got a different point of view, if you're offended, that's not my fault. It's not up to me to say, oh, I can't say that because they'll be offended. And what's happening now is the woke new world. If you disagree with the woke world, you're homophobic, you're transphobic, and then it's an offence and you're being arrested. Absolute craziness. If somebody wants to be gay, that's up to them. If somebody wants to be transgender, that's entirely up to them, long as they're over 18. I don't think that transgenders should be in schools. I don't think that genderism ought to be taught in schools. Kids have not got the mental capacity to handle it at a young age. I was a youth worker for 10 years. I was a counsellor. And when you talk to kids, you've got to moderate what you say to them. And you've got to come down to their level and their way of thinking. And you've got to try and manipulate them into thinking the right thing or help them along, And if a kid said, I think I'm homosexual, you would say, well, hang on for a couple of years, see how you feel. One lad that said that to me is now married with 4 kids. And he came up to me in the village and said, Ian, thank you very much for what you did. I said, sorry, I don't know what I did. And we'd only had a little chat in the coffee bar. Same with the girl. I had a girl who thought she was lesbian. I said, well, that's all right. But she was, 15 years old? And I said, well, that's all right. But what I would do is just hold on, wait and see how you feel in a couple of years. She's married, got 2 kids, and she's happy as Larry. She's a manager of a supermarket. So kids' feelings change. And the idea is that you hold them back a little bit. Today, if a child at school says, oh, I fancy boys, if it's a boy, you're not homosexual, you're transgender, you've got to change sex and be a girl. And this is where the teacher leads them. That's not counselling. That's abuse. That is child abuse. Making a child or persuading a child to take hormones and change sex under 18 is child abuse. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And I got Professor Wilson to back me up, Lord Wilson. He said, sex changing for kids is mutilation and against the oath that doctors take. That's it. Simple. Anyway, I've had a hell of a year, up and down and all over the place. And for the last 3 months, I've been working quite well. Working part-time in my workshop, doing my videos, if you've seen my videos. And we've been having a go at starmer. And every time there's a press release from the Labour Party, it's another video. And the petition to get a general election is now up to 3 million. and growing. It's sort of had another spurt over the last couple of weeks. I think because of the report that the BBC banned it. Because the BBC banned it, people are downloading it onto their phones. Brilliant. The song is freezing this Christmas, and the money for it is going to Age UK. Brilliant idea. And I thought that Starmer would resign before Christmas. He hasn't. We're now hearing rumours that there are 100 Labour MPs who were worried about their seats, and they want Starmer to go because they think at the next election, if Starmer's still there, they will lose their seats. Well, that's almost obvious. We rejected the Conservatives. We're now rejecting Labour. And what's left? Well, there's the Greens, there's Liberal Democrats, and Reform. And Reform, for me, is the best hope. Anyway, Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a nice day tomorrow. Stay with your family. Don't worry about politics for a couple of days. Have Christmas Day and Boxing Day. And we'll get back to politics in the new year. Anyway, Ian, signing off. Somerset News Network. Bye-bye.